on Saturday afternoon, a horrible tragedy occurred when 3 people went into the water in Lake Eloise. The good news is we were able to rescue one of the people, a young lady. But we have been searching for almost 48 hours with the help of the Seminole County Sheriff's Office and some special equipment they have, and FWC with some special equipment they have along with our equipment. I'm pleased that we found these folks. I'm very sorry that we didn't find them alive, but we didn't anticipate that we would. At 1:30 this afternoon, Jeffrey Morero was located, and at 3:40 this afternoon, Orlando Ortiz was located. They were about 300 to 400 yards offshore in the lake. They were still at the bottom of the lake. They were located by FWC's sonar that they use, and they were located about 150 yards apart. It's miraculous with the technology today. That's the only reason we found them this quick, because it's a very large lake. We have been working grid patterns all through the day and night in order to try and recover these folks for their loved ones. The loved ones have obviously been notified that they are deceased and have been recovered. And they were in about 16 foot of water when we found them both. Do you have any other questions?
The sonar was on an FWC boat?
The sonar was pulled through the water. It was a piece of their equipment. And Seminole County also had an underwater drone that once we noticed the objects, then at that point in time we brought the Seminole County drone in. But it was their equipment that found them, and then of course we recovered them with our dive team.
Sheriff, obviously a tragedy. How are the families doing? How are they dealing with this?
Well, it's a tragedy of monumental proportions, and they're not dealing with it well at all. As you can imagine, neither would you or I if some of our loved ones who just went out for a Saturday afternoon on the lake like hundreds of thousands of people do every weekend in Florida, and it turned to tragedy, and they are distraught, as you would imagine. And you know, we need to just keep them all in our prayers, and they'll have to work through this, and time and a lot of prayers and a lot of friends are the only thing that helps work through a tragedy of this magnitude.
Did the weather or water condition play a role in this at all?
If this had been the middle of the summer, we would have found them quicker, because they would have floated quicker. But we could not have searched for them any more diligently in the middle of the summer than we did now. It's just that with the water conditions being so cool that they stayed on the bottom longer. And what they do when we say they're on the bottom, they are not necessarily laying on the bottom. They may be floating just off of the bottom. But the lake is a massive lake, and we only had it narrowed down to about half of the lake, because we know that they were in the center of the lake when they went into the water. And then we look at the tides, and there's not a traditional tide, but there were white caps, and the water was, or the wind was blowing about 20 miles an hour. So we had about 2 foot chops. So we estimate where would they be based upon that. And then there's water and current flow underneath in the lake as well that we have to calculate. So we were searching a good half of the lake diligently. So once again, the warm weather in the summer would have caused them to float sooner, but the search could not have been any more diligent, whether it was in the summer or in the winter.
Are there any clues as to what possibly could have happened?
Well, we pretty much know what happened. They decided they would anchor in the middle of the lake, and they were novices. They had passed a basic test, as I'm told, in order to rent the boat. But as it's explained to us, the rope that secured the anchor was not secured to the boat. Well, the young lady involved, she thought that you had to get into the water to put the anchor in the water and then tie it to the boat. So when she got into the water to put the anchor in, well, it's not secured to the boat. Now the boat's floating away. Well, she becomes scared, and then the two gentlemen, they jump into the lake to help her. Well, ultimately, she's a better swimmer than they are, and she swam for a while and then rolled over and floated. The other two gentlemen were not very good swimmers, and ultimately they sunk. But as you can tell, they went down pretty close to each other, but they were found 150 yards apart, and that's because of the movement of the lake. So it was because they were novices with boats and that this tragic event occurred, and that's the information we have at this point of the investigation.
Do you think the boat rental place did all the precautions that they should have before this family took this boat out?
Well, this was a very good boat. It's a Tahoe-made boat. The children had on their life vests. There were other life vests in the boat. They were given a course, an online course, as it's described to me, before they allowed them to take the boat out. But once again, when you get into the water and the wind's blowing 20 miles an hour and it's choppy, it's not a failure on the boat. It's not like the boat tipped over. The only question that we have is, why wasn't the tow rope already secured to the boat? And that'll be part of the investigation. But even with that, if you'd have gotten in the water to put the anchor in the water, you would have had the same outcome, I would imagine.
And the boat came equipped with the proper life jacket for everyone?
There were life jackets, as I'm told, for everyone. And the children, 8 and 10 years old, the little girl who called 911, who was 10 years old, was very well composed. I've listened to the 911 tape. We're not going to release that now. The detectives are still, I'm not even sure if they've heard it at this stage of the investigation. But there was nothing unique. They called for help, and immediately we responded. Our two deputies came to this, which is the only public access into Eloise through this lake, and commandeered a boat, and a gentleman who was about to go fishing was more than happy to help us, and we rescued the one lady who was in the water. And then after that, we were able to find the two children. They had blown up into the high weeds. Another deputy got into the water and went to them in the boat because we couldn't drive a boat up to them. So it was quite a hectic afternoon, Friday afternoon, but obviously the men were no place to be found on Friday afternoon.
Is there anything that we know so far about the class that they took, or the preparation that they took?
No, that'll be part of the investigation, I'm certain.
When will Lake Eloise be opening?
As soon as we finish on the lake today, it'll open up this afternoon.
So as of right now, there's nothing that indicates that they shouldn't have been allowed out on that boat?
No, nothing at all at this early stage of the investigation. As you all know, we release information to you as we receive it, and anything we say is subject to modification as the investigation goes on. Some agencies don't say anything till the investigation's complete. We tell you the information that we know at the time, and certainly if the investigation tells us something else, we'll make that available at that time. Okay?
In light of that newest information, have you spoken to the woman?
I've not spoken to the family. Our detectives have spoken to the family as well as our Marine Patrol people. Okay?
Quick question on the names. We're noticing that in the information that's come out, Jeffrey Moreros, there's two different spellings of the name. Do you have it? Or know it?
Our PIO will get that for you.
Yeah, two different.
All right? Thank you very much. Take care.